Imagine walking into your office on a Monday morning to find out your network has crashed and all your data is unavailable. Have you ever thought how much that would cost your business? And at 7 a.m. on a Monday morning, what do you do and who do you call? Joining me today to discuss the merits of outsourcing your IT systems are Joanna McDowell, the Managing Director of HMC Seswa, and Orrin Klopper, MD of Netsurit. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Joanna, I'll start with you. IT is obviously vital to any business. How vital have you found it in a small business?
It's absolutely critical. If our IT isn't working properly, we just can't perform.
And Orrin, have you found your experience that small companies give a lot of emphasis to the IT?
Definitely. I think technology is one of those elements that can enable a smaller company to compete with larger organizations.
Do you find that small businesses give thought to that kind of what-if scenario? Like I said, where the whole system could go down on a Monday morning.
In the context of that example, no. Not enough thought is given, without a doubt.
And Joanna, what thought did you give to it?
We had to look at getting a system that would be proactive as opposed to reactive, because the amount of time that it takes if you're calling somebody out to come and fix something, as opposed to having a system in place that reacts anyway if before something goes wrong. That was the deciding factor with us.
How do you see it being proactive? So you said proactive versus reactive.
If you have the right system and the right people servicing that system, then they're always with you. They're actually coming into the office to check it on a weekly basis, and they're at the end of a phone if anything goes wrong.
Okay. And from a proactive perspective, managed services is an approach towards technology management in the small and medium enterprise space. And there is technology that service providers like Netsurit can use in servicing other small and medium enterprises out there, whereby it proactively monitors the environment and will create alerts when certain thresholds are reached, and those alerts go through certain escalation procedures, and thereby it's not dependent on a person, it's actually a system proactively monitoring that site.
Okay. Now, I'm a small business owner. Why would I want to outsource my IT as opposed to keep it in-house, where at least I know what's going on?
I think you need to ask, what is your core business? What are you positioning yourself as what area are you positioning yourself as an expert in? And if that is not IT, then focus on your core and outsource your non-core. And there are various elements of outsourcing. Some organizations may choose to outsource every single element of their IT or only certain elements. So there is a decision you can go through there. But most organizations, in our opinion, under 100 PCs, need to look at close to a full outsourced solution.
Now, Joanna, you've just been through the process of choosing somebody.
Yes.
Just take us through your thought process and how you decided to go, firstly for the outsourcing, and how you went through evaluating why you went with a vendor.
Well, there are 7 people in our business. And when I arrived there 12 months ago, they had what I would call the typical model, which is where they would call somebody out when something went wrong. What it meant was that everything was kind of working sort of. So what we did is we went through a process of looking at 3 different service providers, and what we were looking for, which I've always looked for, is somebody who can provide that extra edge, the extra level of servicing that would guarantee almost that we're always able to be up and running. And that's how we made our selection. Slightly more expensive in the short term, but in the long run, much more efficient.
So what were the factors that would turn you off some of the other vendors you decided not to choose?
The one was too small, even for a seven-man company, surprisingly enough. And the other one was, the practices were a bit old-fashioned.
It's interesting you say too small, because I found that every shopping centre you go to, every corner shop almost has an IT outsourcing type person. What are the pitfalls you need to be careful of when choosing a vendor, especially some of, as you say, some of the smaller guys?
Well, in my experience, I think it's more about what I look for is people who are preoccupied with the servicing side, as opposed to trying to sell you a whole lot of hardware and software that you probably don't need.
Absolutely. Now, Orrin, turning to you, I'll take a classic example. Small office, 10 people, maybe 2 locations, Johannesburg, Pretoria, for example. It's always been my perception that anything under 100 or 150 computers, it's not worth outsourcing. I mean, for 10 users, or as you said, for 7, you say there's an advantage.
Definitely. Again, I'll reiterate, it's technology that can take a small business into a space where it can compete and win against much larger and more established organizations. At what point you need to adopt certain levels of technology and certain levels of outsourcing depends on the organization, but in the context of that example, I think as soon as you go over 5 PCs, there is a business case for looking at formalizing your IT infrastructure in the form of a server for hosted mail, for collaboration internally within your business, and especially for an organization of that size, everybody's out at the client, on the road, and the ability to be mobile and connected at the same time is very important. And that's what you can get from a small business server-type technology, which is something that Microsoft offer.
So what's the model generally you use when you're dealing with the small and medium-sized business?
Our approach from a generic IT adoption is, we've called it total technology value. And it's 3 pillars that make that up. It's standardization, standardize your environment, choose a brand, stick to it, and go for a certain level of equipment. Control that environment, so lock it down as best you can. Don't allow every person on that network to install whatever they like and let them do their own administration of the systems. And then automation. What elements of supporting that technology can be automated. And adopting those 3, we've seen that you can really reduce the cost of unnecessary IT expenses, and you can maximize the return.
Janet, did you find that when you went through this whole process that actually there was a cost saving at the end of the day?
Yes, there definitely is, because the added values and the service levels that we get enable us to, as Orrin describes, we can work freely, we can be in and out of the office the whole time. It's almost like having another person there, but they're invisible.
And you find that the quick turnarounds and things, are those the kind of key milestones for you that are important?
It's fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. Now, when you put in your new system, it's probably a question for the 2 of you, did you have to replace a whole lot of the existing hardware you had,
No.
or do you use what's there?
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
Orrin, do you guys require people to do it, or is it something you can say, well, let's see what you've got and work with it?
We definitely take the approach to see what is there. At a certain point in our investigation, and many other providers out there take a similar approach, they will actually do an audit of what's there. We do believe a certain minimum standard is required, and you can prioritize it. So if your budget is not permitting, you could choose to finance it. There are some nice technology finance options out there for small and medium enterprises, because finance is a difficult thing for most small and growing organizations to find. But you can prioritize it.
So you're saying really see what you've got before you think it's going to cost you a whole lot of money up front?
Definitely.
Yes, we only had 1 PC that wasn't up to scratch.
Okay.
So that had to go into retirement.
Now you talk about things like setting up a server. And a lot of the guys have said, well, we may be able to do it, we may not. And as I've always found, everybody's always got a friend who can help them. So, as opposed to just using your friend to help you, why go with an outsource model? I mean, especially when you mention cost. Whenever you talk to small, medium-sized businesses, cash flow is king. And now suddenly we're saying to them, go and take on more cost. So what would you say to somebody who's kind of weighing up the options?
It's a very specialized field. It's the same way that you bring a CA into your business and you can see the experience that these guys have had and what they can actually do. A very similar amount of experience and knowledge and learning is required for a person that's going to set up your server, because that is the central point of which the rest of your technology will hang. So if you get your nephew or your brother's buddy or whatever it is, he's going to dabble, he's going to try his best. When it goes wrong, how are you going to manage it? It's just about running a real business and having professional service providers. It's just best practice.
So what did your business do before you had the outsource type model?
It relied on occasional people to come in and fix it when the system was down. What we found was, at least my experience was, for the first few weeks that I was there, the system always seemed to have a problem. There always just seemed to be something going wrong. It was always, oh, well, this printer doesn't do that, or that's not doing that, or oh, the email's very slow. Nobody really had an answer. And it's extremely frustrating when you're trying to run a business.
Fantastic. I think you've given us a lot to think about as far as outsourcing a business. I know it's something I think I need to think about with the IT systems we've got. So outsourcing IT systems is not just the domain of large corporates. Clearly there are numerous advantages for SMEs in researching outsourcing as an alternative to having their own in-house. My thanks to Jan and Orrin for joining us today. Thanks.